Hey everybody, welcome to another deep dive. And today we're tackling something I know a lot of you were curious about: golf instruction.
Hmm.
Specifically, how technology is changing the game.
Yeah.
Now, to get into this, we're going to be looking at a webinar with three top coaches,
Okay.
Dana, Jeff, and Chris,
Sounds good.
all about this really cool 3D analysis tool called SportsBox.
All right.
So the first thing that jumped out at me is that all three of these coaches are basically saying technology, like, this is a total game changer.
Mm-hmm.
They see SportsBox not just as a way to measure your swing, but like this amazing communication tool.
Mm-hmm.
What struck you about that idea?
Well, I think it's really interesting because a lot of times what a player feels they're doing in their swing
Right.
is completely different from what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And trying to explain that using just words or even like 2D video
Yeah,
can be really, really difficult.
for sure.
But with SportsBox, you get this 3D representation, and it helps the player visualize what's actually going on in their swing.
It's like a light bulb moment. It makes it click for them.
Totally.
Like, you remember Dana's story about tilt and rotation?
Mm-hmm.
You know how your body tilts and turns during the swing?
Right.
That's so crucial, but it's really hard to see in a regular video.
Yeah.
But Dana said with SportsBox players, see that immediately in 3D and it just clicks.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense then.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like Jeff's analogy with the emergency room doctor.
Oh, yeah.
A doctor needs x-rays and all sorts of tests to figure out what's going on.
Right.
And coaches are using SportsBox in the same way to get this super precise picture of what's happening,
Yeah.
of the player's swing, so they can figure out exactly, what needs work.
Like more than just eyeballing it.
Exactly. It's like getting hard data
Yeah.
that you can then use to inform your instruction.
And the coolest thing is SportsBox isn't just stuck in a lab somewhere.
Right.
Chris was talking about how he can use it out on the course during practice rounds with his tour players.
Wow.
So they're getting that real-time feedback, which has got to be huge.
That's incredible. I mean, can you imagine, you're working on something specific and you can see the impact right there on the tablet.
Yeah, like how a tiny grip change impacts swing path, club head speed, all of it.
Exactly. And it's not just for pros either. They have this goals feature
Oh, right.
where any player can practice on their own and track their progress.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's like you're getting this continuous feedback even when you're not with your coach.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Which makes practice way more effective, right?
Yeah, you're not just guessing.
Exactly.
Now, with all this amazing tech, it'd be easy to think, okay, there's like one perfect swing for everyone.
Really?
But thankfully, Dana, Jeff, and Chris all stressed the importance of personalized instruction.
Yeah, they really emphasize that.
Like, Jeff made this point about you have to understand a player's limitations. And sometimes SportsBox will even reveal the reason why someone's struggling to do a certain movement.
Right. It's not about forcing everybody into the same mold.
Yeah.
It's about helping them improve their swing.
Which is so smart because everybody's body is different, right?
Exactly.
You can't expect everyone to swing the same way.
Right. Chris had this great analogy about a 60-year-old insurance salesman.
Okay.
He's like, you can't expect that guy to swing like a tour pro.
Right.
So it's about, using the technology to help people improve based on their own individual capabilities.
Yeah, I love that approach because it's realistic.
It is.
And so now we've seen that SportsBox is about a lot more than just full swing analysis. Like Jeff was talking about how he uses it for things like bunker play,
Oh, wow.
which is huge for improving your short game.
Absolutely.
And the webinar host, Ryan, actually mentioned that Jeff has a whole separate webinar on short game analysis with SportsBox.
Oh, cool.
So that could be something worth checking out for anyone who wants to improve that aspect of their game.
Definitely.
Now, here's something that really blew my mind.
Okay.
Chris was saying he's started using SportsBox data in conjunction with fitness training
Wow.
and even physical therapy.
That's fascinating.
It makes sense when you think about it because your swing is all about how your body moves.
It is.
But it's cool to see them actually connecting those dots. Like,
Yeah.
Chris told the story about working with a tour player and the player's trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and they used targeted mobility work to help increase the player's hip turn during the swing.
Wow, that's amazing.
And they could actually see the difference in the SportsBox data.
So cool.
It's like this perfect marriage of physical conditioning and swing mechanics.
Yeah, it's like a holistic approach to golf instruction.
Exactly. And Dana was complaining about how in the past there was this disconnect between golf instruction and fitness training,
Oh, yeah.
that they weren't speaking the same language.
Right.
But now with 3D analysis, they've got this common ground.
Totally. They can actually see what's happening and use that data to improve.
So what we've seen so far is that SportsBox is more than just a fancy gadget. It's changing the whole conversation around how we teach and learn golf.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see how technology is shaping the future of the game.
But this is only part one of our deep dive into all this. So stick around because there's just so much more to unpack.
So welcome back to our deep dive into golf instruction. And, the last part we were talking about SportsBox and how much data it gives you.
Right. It can be overwhelming.
It really can. And in the webinar, one thing that came up was, how do these coaches make sense of it all?
Yeah. How do they not just get lost in the numbers?
Well, they all talked about finding their flow with it. It's like, everyone has their own teaching style, right?
Yeah.
So they figured out how to integrate SportsBox without, taking over the whole lesson.
Yeah.
It's about using it as a tool, not letting it become the main event.
Like Jeff was saying, he uses it very strategically. He focuses on efficiency, picking out the data points that'll actually make a difference for that particular player.
Right. It's about quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Really understanding what the data means, not just throwing numbers around.
And that goes back to that personalized instruction idea. Like Chris was very clear about keeping the player's perspective in mind.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about showing off how much data you have. It's about making sure it's actually useful for the player.
Right. Make sure they understand it.
So, okay, we've talked about the data itself, but what about using it to understand player tendencies?
Okay.
Because everyone has them, right? Even the pros.
Oh, absolutely.
Like Chris shared some fascinating stories about his tour players.
Yeah.
Like some players who naturally fade the ball will tend to slice it when there's a left to right wind.
Interesting.
It's those tiny little adjustments they make without even realizing it.
Yeah, subconscious stuff.
That can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So how does SportsBox help?
Well, Chris uses it to help the players become aware of those patterns.
Okay.
So you can actually show them, look, when this happens, you tend to do this.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then they can work together to figure out how to manage it.
Okay.
Whether it's, adjusting their warm-up routine or even just a pre-shot thought process.
So cool. And Dana made this great point about how even the smallest adjustments can impact your performance.
Right.
Like no two swings are ever going to be exactly the same, but it's about staying within a certain zone of consistency.
He had this great analogy about a fingerprint.
Okay.
Every golfer has their own unique swing signature.
Oh, I like that.
And SportsBox helps them decode it.
That's cool.
Figure out what makes that player successful.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's really cool. But one thing that really struck me throughout the webinar was just like the coach's enthusiasm for using this technology.
Yeah.
They weren't skeptical at all.
Right.
They were just excited about the possibilities. And not just for themselves, but for their players too.
Right.
Like Dana was saying, it can really help younger coaches, maybe those who are just starting out,
Yeah.
deliver their instruction with more confidence.
Sure, because they've got that data to back it up.
Exactly.
Especially when you're building trust with a new player. And then Jeff was really into the whole idea of creating a more effective feedback loop, with that goals feature we talked about.
Yeah.
Players can actually see their progress.
Right, which keeps them motivated and engaged.
Right.
It takes them from, passive student to active participant.
Yeah, that's so empowering.
It is.
I have heard some people worry, though, that relying too much on data, it's going to take away from the art of coaching.
Oh,
Like make things too robotic, stifle creativity.
Right.
What did the coaches have to say about that?
Well, they didn't see it that way at all.
Okay.
Like Chris made this great analogy.
Okay.
He said SportsBox is like a stethoscope for a doctor.
Interesting.
It gives you valuable information,
Right.
but it's still up to the doctor to interpret that information and make a diagnosis.
Oh, so the tech is just giving you more insights,
Right.
but it's still the coach's expertise that's guiding the instruction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Jeff said that it actually frees up more of his time and energy to focus on other aspects of coaching, like course management, the mental game,
Oh, wow.
just building those relationships with his players.
Okay.
He's not getting bogged down in, the minutia of the swing.
Right.
Because the tech is handling some of that.
He can focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly. So it doesn't seem like technology is going to replace coaches anytime soon.
Right.
It's more about finding that balance,
Yeah.
using the data,
Yeah.
but still, keeping that human element of coaching front and center.
Okay.
And this is where the idea of collaboration comes in, right?
Oh, yeah. They were all about teamwork,
Yeah.
working with fitness professionals, sports psychologists, anyone who can contribute to the player's development.
It's a holistic approach,
Yeah.
recognizing that improving your golf game isn't just about fixing your swing.
Chris had a great example of this.
Oh, yeah?
He was working with a tour player, and the player's trainer. And they use these targeted mobility exercises to actually increase the player's hip turn.
Wow.
Which they could measure with SportsBox, of course.
That's incredible.
It's amazing how connected everything is.
It really is.
You know, your physical condition, your swing mechanics, your mental game, and technology like SportsBox can really help bring all those pieces together.
Totally. And Dana was talking about how historically there's been this disconnect between golf instruction and fitness training.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they were operating these separate silos.
Right.
But now with 3D analysis, they can actually speak the same language.
Yeah.
They can pinpoint those physical limitations and create training programs that address them.
So now they're finally on the same team.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how coaches are using this technology, but what about the players themselves?
Yeah.
How are they reacting to all of this?
Well, from what the coaches were saying, it's been really positive.
Good.
They said that SportsBox actually makes the learning process more engaging.
Oh, that's great.
And even fun for the players.
Because it takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, you can actually see what's happening.
Right.
Rather than just relying on feel or what your coach is telling you.
And that leads to faster progress, more confidence.
Exactly.
And then there's that goals feature again.
Right.
Which Jeff thinks is a total game changer.
Yeah.
Because it gives players that instant feedback loop they can practice on their own and see themselves improving.
That's huge for motivation.
It is.
And Dana said that for younger players especially, you know, having that objective data can really help them buy into the instruction and trust the process.
So it's not just about analyzing your swing, it's about creating a better learning experience.
Yeah, a more effective and enjoyable learning experience.
But players at all levels.
Right, and I think it shows a really important shift that's happening in golf instruction.
Okay.
Moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach to something that's more personalized, data-driven.
It's exciting to see how technology is transforming this sport.
It really is.
Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to go back to something we mentioned earlier about finding your own flow with SportsBox.
Right. You know, there's no right or wrong way to use it.
Exactly.
Each coach needs to experiment and figure out what works best for their style, for their players.
And it makes you think about the role of the coach, too, right? With all this technology available, is the coach becoming more of a facilitator, a guide, or something else entirely?
That's a great question.
It is a really interesting question.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But there's still one more part to this deep dive.
All right.
So after a quick break, we'll come back and explore some of the key takeaways from all this.
Sounds good.
And what it all means for you and your game. Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into golf instruction and all this amazing technology.
It's been a lot to take in, but some really cool stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely a lot of great insights from Dana, Jeff, and Chris. But before we tee off into the sunset,
I like that.
Let's pull out a few key takeaways.
Sounds good.
That you can actually use,
okay,
you know, in your own game or if you're a coach.
So I think one of the big things is what Chris was saying about finding your flow.
Right.
It's tempting to think you have to completely change your approach to use something like SportsBox. But he's saying that's not true at all.
Yeah, it's more about integrating it into what you're already doing, finding what works best for you.
And then Jeff was all about efficiency. You know, don't get bogged down in every single data point.
Right.
Pick and choose what's most relevant.
It's about those quality insights.
Yeah.
Not just a ton of numbers.
And that goes back to what we've been saying all along about keeping the player's perspective in mind.
Right.
Make sure the data actually makes sense to them.
Yeah, explain things clearly.
Yeah.
Show them how it relates to what they're feeling.
Make it a collaboration.
Exactly.
Now, something Dana brought up that I thought was really interesting was the importance of teamwork.
Oh, yeah.
He's basically saying golf instruction can't just be this solo thing anymore.
Right.
You got to be willing to work with other experts.
You know, fitness trainers, sports psychologists, the whole team.
It's about the player's holistic development.
There really is.
Not just fixing their swing. So, you know, share that data, create a plan, and everyone works together.
Like it takes a village.
Exactly.
But for golf.
Okay, so as we wrap up this whole deep dive, what are your big takeaways?
Well, I think it's clear that technology like SportsBox is having a huge impact on golf instruction.
For sure.
It's giving coaches all these incredible tools.
And it's making the learning process better for the player.
Yeah, more efficient, more personalized.
More fun.
More fun.
But the thing is, technology is just a tool.
Right.
It's not a replacement for the coach.
Yeah, the coach's expertise, their ability to connect with the player.
That human element.
That's still so important.
I totally agree.
And that's a great point to end on.
It is. It's an exciting time to be involved in golf.
It really is. Who knows what's coming next?
Right. But we'll leave you with this final thought. We've talked about how technology is kind of blurring the lines between golf instruction, fitness, sports psychology.
Yeah?
What other fields do you think might become part of golf coaching in the future?
That's interesting.
Like nutrition, maybe?
Possibly.
Or data science?
Yeah, there are so many possibilities.
It's an open
It
question.
really makes you wonder what the future holds.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive
That's good.
into the world of golf instruction. Hopefully you learned something new.
Yeah, some aha moments.
And yeah, whether you're embracing the latest tech
Right?
or sticking with what you know,
Mm-hmm.
the important thing is to keep learning, keep exploring,
Absolutely.
keep helping those players reach their potential.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll catch you next time.